Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 25th April, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is navigating a complex economic landscape, with trade talks seemingly on the horizon after President Trump signaled potential tariff reductions, despite earlier counter-tariffs imposed on U.S. goods. However, China disputes President Trump's claims of active negotiations and progress, labeling them as fake news. Trade tensions and tariffs have impacted ventures like SAC General Motors, Corp. Ltd. Yet Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg remains optimistic about his company's financial recovery. Some domestic companies making protective gear for healthcare workers are concerned that President Trump's trade war with China won't help them. Meanwhile, China's space program continues to advance, with the Shenzhou 20 spacecraft carrying 3 astronauts on a 6-month mission focused on experiments and equipment installation for space debris protection. And the mission includes superconductor tests. Concurrently, China has unveiled a drone-mounted quantum device designed for submarine detection in the South China Sea. China's approach to the South China Sea tensions involves de-escalation in the short term, with long-term resolution as the ultimate goal. Allegations of foreign interference have also surfaced, with the National Security Council believing China is attempting to influence the Philippines' midterm elections through social media. South Korea has raised concerns that DeepSeek sent data to ByteDance servers in China without consent. The European Parliament is reportedly nearing an agreement with China to lift sanctions on EU lawmakers, even as Brussels maintains its sanctions on Xinjiang. Other developments include the rise of AI hair-washing services, new journal publishing benchmarks, the growing pricing power of PopMart, and the resilience of Chinese robot makers to U.S. tariffs. A fossil find in China revealed an unusual dinosaur mammal food chain. State media has warned that China's involution trap is harming the nation's competitiveness. Shifting focus to the United States, President Trump is softening his stance on tariffs on China, though policy changes remain uncertain. He is also focusing on higher education and K-12 schools with executive actions. The White House is reportedly pushing Ukraine to accept a U.S.-backed peace deal. In Norway, athletes have been advised to avoid meat while in China due to doping concerns during upcoming athletic events. Back in the Philippines, the National Security Council is wary of China's alleged attempts to influence the midterm elections through social media. Finally, in South Korea, concerns have arisen over DeepSeek's data transfer to ByteDance servers in China without consent. Following a deadly militant attack in Kashmir, India has heightened tensions with Pakistan by closing a key land border, canceling a water-sharing treaty, and revoking visa exemptions and existing visas for Pakistani citizens. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh promised a strong response against the perpetrators, including those operating covertly. Pakistan denies any involvement. Islamabad has retaliated by closing its airspace to Indian aircraft, halting trade with India, and declaring that any disruption of water supplies under the Indus Waters Treaty would be seen as an act of war, labeling India's treaty suspension as an act of war. The U.S. Department of State advises against travel within 10 kilometers of the India-Pakistan border due to the risk of armed conflict. The situation is reminiscent of the 2019 crisis, raising fears of a similar escalation. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his family have concluded their visit to India, which included sightseeing in Jaipur and Agra, as well as a meeting with Prime Minister Modi. They departed from Jaipur Airport en route to Washington on a special aircraft. Ukraine. Russia launched a devastating air attack on Kyiv, killing at least 12 and injuring over 90. Ukraine reported that Russia launched at least 215 drones and missiles at Ukraine, most aimed at the capital. Donald Trump called on Vladimir Putin to halt the attacks. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine cannot accept US recognition of Russia's annexation of Crimea, following Trump's accusations that Zelensky was intransigent and his resistance very harmful to peace talks. Zelensky also stated that at least 155 Chinese nationals are fighting with the Russian army. During an Easter truce, the U.S. claimed to have presented both sides with the outlines of a lasting peace. Europeans view Ukraine's security as vital and wish to defend the principle of no border changes by force, even if Trump doesn't. United States. Donald Trump called on Vladimir Putin to halt attacks on Ukraine. Trump also criticized Zelensky's resistance to his peace plan, calling it very harmful to talks while continuing to seek a deal with both leaders. The U.S. presented both sides with the outlines of a lasting peace during an Easter truce. President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa stated that he discussed the war in Ukraine and the importance of bilateral relations with the U.S. during a phone call with Donald Trump. Russia's air attack on Kyiv resulted in at least 12 deaths and over 90 injuries. Russia launched at least 215 drones and missiles at Ukraine, most aimed at the capital. Donald Trump urged Vladimir Putin to stop the attacks. Volodymyr Zelensky stated that at least 155 Chinese nationals are fighting with the Russian army. United Kingdom. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, claimed the UK is massively overdiagnosing those with mental illness problems and creating a class of victims, alleging it is too easy to get a mental health diagnosis from a GP. A £5 billion programme of disability benefits cuts planned by the UK government will disproportionately affect people in Wales and Northern England, entrenching deprivation, according to Policy in Practice, which found the impact across the UK uneven. Britain has little reason to prioritise the US alliance when Trump shows few signs of defending previously shared values. Nicola Packer, 44, is on trial in London accused of illegally taking pills to induce an abortion during the second coronavirus lockdown. She was arrested in November 2020 after reporting a miscarriage and admitting to taking abortion medication. Lloyds Bank said most scams occurred on Facebook as fraudsters targeted the reunion tour. Syria. Sanctions on 12 Syrian entities have been removed, including the Defense and Interior Ministries. South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa stated that he discussed the war in Ukraine and the need to foster good bilateral relations with the U.S. during a phone call with Donald Trump. China. Volodymyr Zelensky stated that at least 155 Chinese nationals are fighting with the Russian army in Ukraine. The United States is under increased scrutiny due to governance standards and trade policy erosion, with some analysts suggesting the U.S. presents greater political risks than emerging economies. The Trump administration's tariff policies face criticism from the IMF, which urges the U.S. to strike trade deals to mitigate global economic damage. Several U.S. states have filed lawsuits against the administration, challenging the legality of the tariffs. These policies also risk driving countries to strengthen ties with China. The U.S. has a significant $236 billion trade deficit with the European Union, which now faces 20% tariffs. The prospect of a special deal has boosted us equities markets. PEN America reported a growing risk to free expression for us writers. Intelligence analyst Corbijn Schultz was jailed for selling defense secrets to China, receiving $42,000 for over 90 sensitive military documents. US Defense Chief Pete Hegseth requested a makeup studio in the Pentagon for on-camera appearances. Cornell University canceled a performance by R&B singer Kehlani due to alleged anti-Semitic sentiments expressed in the past. Shifting focus to China, its international relations are evolving as it strengthens relationships with other nations, as tariff policies could encourage countries to build more durable relationships with China. The Chinese Space Agency has granted us scientists access to lunar samples from the Chang'e 5 probe. Meanwhile, the U.S. military is deploying strategic bombers and missile systems throughout the region as a signal to Beijing. Turning to Japan, 2 U.S. Marines stationed in Okinawa are under investigation for alleged rape. 1 Marine is suspected of raping a Japanese woman at a U.S. military base, while the other allegedly raped a woman at a base in January. South Korea's diplomatic strategy is expected to remain consistent, fostering closer ties with China, a move supported by its alliance with the U.S. Finally, the European Union grapples with the impact of US policies, including the $236 billion trade deficit and 20% tariffs. EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, is working to strengthen Europe's geopolitical influence due to perceived hostility from the U.S. president. Ukraine experienced a devastating missile and drone attack on Kyiv by Russia, resulting in at least 9 deaths and 63 injuries, marking the deadliest assault since the 2022 invasion. Ukrainian officials decried the attack as evidence of Russia's unwillingness to pursue peace. Former U.S. President Donald Trump criticized Vladimir Putin's actions as not necessary and very bad timing, urging him to cease the attacks. Trump also criticized the Ukrainian president as being inflammatory after Kyiv rejected U.S. terms to end the war with Russia, which proposed freezing territory along the current front line. Meanwhile, Major General Ivan Popov, a Russian commander, has reportedly been jailed after his dismissal for criticizing the army's senior command. Continuing tensions, Russia has further strained relations with the United Kingdom by adding 21 British parliamentarians to its list of banned individuals. In Bosnia, a security incident has heightened tensions following reports that state security officers attempted to arrest the pro-Russian Bosnian Serb president, but were blocked by his armed police. The Czech Republic has voiced strong condemnation of threats directed at NHL legend Dominik Hasek by a former Russian president and prime minister, stemming from Hasek's criticism of the invasion of Ukraine. Israel's military operations in Gaza remain a focal point of international scrutiny. Airstrikes throughout Gaza have caused significant casualties, including women and children. One strike on a school in Al-Tafah, Gaza City, sheltering civilians, resulted in 11 deaths. Humanitarian organizations are increasingly worried about the safety of civilians, especially after Israel stopped designating areas of Gaza as humanitarian zones last month. The rate of civilian deaths is reportedly 4 times higher than in previous regional conflicts. As of March 23rd, the death toll in Gaza exceeded 50,000. The Israeli military initially justified an incident involving the killing of emergency workers in ambulances and a fire truck, claiming the vehicles were moving suspiciously toward troops. However, a later investigation cited an operational misunderstanding and professional failures, marking a rare admission of error. Mediators from Arab nations are actively proposing a new ceasefire plan. Hamas has rejected demands from Israel and the United States to disarm. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called on Hamas to release captives, asserting that doing so would remove Israel's justification for its attacks on Gaza. A health professional's guide is being utilized to aid former hostages transitioning from captivity. The actions and background of Israel's National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, continue to spark controversy. Ben-Gvir, who has past convictions for supporting terrorism, was honored at a dinner at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. He was also scheduled to speak at Yale University, where he was met by pro-Palestinian protests. On Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, the Polish and Israeli presidents participated in the annual march at the Auschwitz death camp, along with thousands of Israeli youth and others. Japan is accelerating its electronic travel authorization system for visa-exempt visitors, targeting fiscal year 2828. Cyclists will face on-the-spot fines for traffic violations, starting in 2026, to improve road safety. Japan is also progressing in railgun technology development to counter hypersonic weapons. Supermarket sales in Japan increased in value for the fifth consecutive year in fiscal 2024 due to higher prices, though sales volume declined. Toyota Motor reported an 8% increase in U.S. sales and Honda Motor a 13% jump. Nintendo's shares rose due to strong domestic demand for the upcoming Switch 2 console. Japanese firms are implementing reforms to close the gender pay gap. The World Expo is struggling with visitor numbers. Denmark's King, Frederik X, visited Ippudo, a ramen restaurant in Tokyo. Tuvalu commemorated the 82nd anniversary of the Japanese bombing on Te Aso or Te Pola. Turning to the United States, the Treasury Secretary stated that Washington has no currency targets in trade talks with Japan. The U.S. is encouraging Japan and South Korea to invest in an Alaska Lang project. The threat of tariffs from President Trump has prompted countries, including Japan and South Korea, to engage in negotiations. Finally, award-winning chemist Shang Rui is leaving Japan to establish a university lab in China. Pakistan, amidst heightened tensions following the Kashmir attack, has cautioned against any misadventure, signaling concerns about potential Indian retaliation. The National Security Council, NSC, has also stated that interference with Indus waters would be seen as an act of war. Preparations are underway for a surface-to-surface missile test near Karachi on April 24th and 25th, 2025. Reacting to the Kashmir incident, Pakistan has halted trade with India, shut down its airspace and land border, and revoked visas for most Indian citizens. The country continues to struggle with endemic polio, battling challenges as vaccination teams face attacks by militants. Turning to India, the nation has pledged retribution for the Kashmir attack and alleged Pakistani support for terrorism. The government has announced a series of retaliatory measures, suggesting further actions are possible. India has temporarily suspended the Indus Water Treaty of 1960 and reduced diplomatic relations with Pakistan. Canada is gearing up for a federal election on April 28. The elections landscape has been shaped by U.S. President Donald Trump's trade disputes and annexation rhetoric, potentially improving the Liberal Party's chances for a fourth consecutive term. Concerns among voters are focused on the impact and threat of tariffs, along with the increasingly tense relationship with the United States. Rising housing costs, with many homes approaching $1 million, are driving residents away from cities such as Vancouver, and Canadians are eager for their next Prime Minister to tackle this challenge. Mark Carney, the former central banker who became the Liberal Party leader last month, is participating in his inaugural election, aiming to represent a middle-class suburb of Ottawa. In other news, a shooting at Toronto Pearson International Airport led to a partial closure of its largest terminal following a man brandishing a firearm. Authorities quickly intervened and apprehended the individual, and the terminal was cleared and reopened within hours. Australia's Defence Department has asked Liberal MNPs, including Shadow Defence Minister Andrew Hastie, to stop using images of themselves in military uniform in election ads. The department is concerned about candidates being depicted in military attire, such as jumping from planes or holding rifles. Preferences remain critical in Australian elections, with the 2022 results showing a majority of first preference votes, determining the winner in only 15 of 151 seats. Parties distribute how-to-vote cards to sway voter preferences, which can be decisive. Groups like Repeal the Teal, linked to the Jewish community, are targeting Teal independents in Victoria and New South Wales, including Zoe Daniel and Goldstein, who is challenged by liberal Tim Wilson. There are growing concerns that increased defense spending may reduce foreign aid. Experts also worry about young Australians facing an oral health blind spot, with major parties reluctant to include dental care in Medicare. A study indicates young adults are the least likely to access regular dental care. The forecast for parts of Australia's east coast predicts wet and stormy weather over the Anzac Day long weekend. Sydney is expected to experience brief storms on Friday, but conditions should remain fairly dry for morning Anzac services. Malaysia's former Prime Minister, Mahathir Mohamad, reflected on his 24 years in office. He acknowledged transforming Malaysia's economy during his first 22-year term. He also addressed accusations of authoritarianism and anti-Semitism. The Malaysian Health Ministry drew criticism for its extravagant Hari Raya celebration. This was seen as insensitive, given reports of underpaid and overworked healthcare staff. A ministry survey highlighted a concerning trend. 1/3 of Malaysians aged 5 to 19 are overweight. High sugar diets are the primary contributing factor. With Malaysia's oil reserves dwindling, Uganda's substantial untapped reserves are gaining attention. These reserves, estimated at 6.5 billion barrels, could offer a potential solution. Furthermore, logistics companies are allegedly using social media to attract online merchants. These firms are offering illegal undervaluation schemes to help merchants avoid US duties. The schemes involve falsely claiming products were made in Malaysia. United States. The United States faces legal action from 12 states: Oregon, Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, and Vermont, challenging the Trump administration's tariff policies. Trade discussions are ongoing, with the U.S. voicing concerns about the yen's undervalued state and its impact on dollar valuation. Online retailers Temu and Shine are preparing to increase prices for American consumers due to upcoming tariff hikes. Chinese citizens traveling to the U.S. are now advised to expect thorough questioning at the border and must have all necessary documents readily available. United Kingdom. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is actively seeking a trade agreement with the United States to alleviate economic strain related to potential tariff increases. Rachel Reeves has affirmed that the UK will not lower its standards for the sake of a U.S. trade deal, specifically opposing the import of hormone-treated beef. Brazil faces scrutiny as environmental groups protest JBS's planned New York Stock Exchange listing, citing the company's connection to Amazon deforestation. Allegations of slavery-like conditions are also surfacing against a Starbucks coffee supplier, prompting legal action from Brazilian workers who reported deceptive recruitment practices. Meanwhile, São Paulo's mayor, Ricardo Nunes, believes China-U.S. trade tensions offer Brazil partnership opportunities with China, specifically in clean energy, public transit, and urban development projects. Cyprus is receiving aid from the United Arab Emirates in the form of portable desalination plants. This assistance aims to combat the severe water scarcity the island nation faces due to critically low reservoir levels. Meanwhile, Jordan is taking decisive steps to fully outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood. This action follows a 2020 court ruling that set the stage for the Islamist group's dissolution, effectively ending its operations within the country. The Democratic Republic of Congo has agreed to a ceasefire with the Rwanda-backed M23 coalition. This agreement came after peace talks were facilitated by Qatar. Both sides affirmed their dedication to finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict. More talks are planned in Qatar soon. These will aim for a more complete peace agreement. Jordan has shut down the local branch of the Muslim Brotherhood and banned membership in the Islamist political group. This action follows the arrest of 16 members accused of threatening national security through militant training explosives manufacturing, and plotting attacks within Jordan. The move could potentially shatter the country's largest opposition party, the Islamic Action Front, which is the Brotherhood's political arm in Jordan. Kenya's President William Ruto is currently in China for a 5-day visit, his third to Beijing since taking office in 2022, where he has pledged to deepen ties. In other news, Kenyan police raided a church in the western part of the country, uncovering 2 corpses and rescuing 57 members. Iran recently detained 4 state TV employees following accusations of disrespecting a revered figure in Sunni Islam. Shifting focus, Iran has consented to host an IAEA team to explore the reactivation of camera systems at its nuclear facilities. Israel, according to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, views Iran as a grave danger to its existence. Netanyahu voiced his concerns during a Holocaust memorial event, extending the threat to encompass all people. Indonesia is taking notable steps in environmental protection and international relations. One Family Indonesia plants 15,000 mangrove trees annually. This initiative aims to combat climate change in a village facing submersion. Simultaneously, Indonesia seeks to navigate the complex dynamics between the United States and China. The nation hopes to maintain balanced relations, potentially acting as a mediator between the 2 superpowers. Tanzania is experiencing heightened political tensions as authorities intensify their crackdown on the opposition Chadema party ahead of the upcoming October elections. This clampdown has resulted in the arrest of multiple opposition figures, including Chadema's Vice Chair John Hegshay and Secretary General John Mnyika. The arrests occurred while the officials were traveling to a rally intended to support Tundu Lissu, who is currently refusing to participate in a virtual court hearing concerning a treason charge against him. Argentina still awaits a papal visit from Pope Francis, who has never returned to his native land since assuming his pontificate. Experts suggest his continued absence may stem from concerns that his presence could be manipulated for political gain. Spain recently cancelled a €6 60 million order for millions of bullets from an Israeli company. This decision followed criticism from junior partners within the ruling coalition. These partners expressed concern that the arms purchase undermined Spain's ability to hold Israel accountable for its actions in Gaza. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has been notably critical of Israel's conduct during the ongoing conflict. France is grappling with another school, stabbing after a student in Nantes attacked 4 others at a high school. Tragically, 1 student died from their injuries. The motive for the attack remains unclear, sparking investigations. This incident is particularly concerning given the rising anxiety surrounding knife-related violence in French schools. Georgia is seeing controversy surrounding Dia Kulmbakashvili's film April, which addresses the challenges women encounter when trying to access abortion services. The film will not be distributed in Georgia due to distributors' concerns about potential clashes with authorities over its sensitive thematic content. Mexico is seeing growing pushback against narco-culture, with several cities and states actively working to counter the trend of artists glorifying drug cartels in their music. The increasing popularity of these artists has prompted concerns among authorities. Guatemala saw the arrest of an indigenous leader who led nationwide protests in 2023. He faces terrorism charges. The protests protected President-elect Bernardo Arevalo's transition. Protesters also demanded the resignation of the Attorney General. Colombia is facing serious allegations as former Foreign Minister Alvaro Leiva has accused President Gustavo Petro of drug abuse and being a wall during an official trip to France. Leiva, previously a close supporter of Petro, made these claims public through a letter shared on his X account. Cambodia's decision to permit Japanese ships to dock at the China-funded Ream naval base signals an openness to international cooperation and suggests the base is not exclusively for Chinese use, according to analysts. Turning to Ethiopia, new European Union deforestation regulations, which require geolocation data to verify coffee beans are not linked to deforestation, are causing concern among Ethiopian coffee farmers, who say they need more time to adapt. In Fiji, concerns are being raised about the potential presence of fentanyl. Moving to France, President Emmanuel Macron conducted a 2-day state visit to Madagascar, marking the first visit by a French leader in 20 years, to discuss the need for France to adopt new approaches. In Germany, the government has significantly reduced its economic growth forecast for 2025 to 0%, a sharp decline from the 0.3% projected in January, citing economic turbulence from U.S. tariffs, bureaucratic obstacles, and high energy costs. Shifting to Haiti, gangs are intensifying their efforts to seize control of the capital, resulting in the deaths of at least 4 soldiers and 4 armed civilians, as reported by the Haitian National Police. In Hong Kong, authorities have granted Cardinal Joseph Zen, a prominent Roman Catholic figure, permission to travel to Vatican City to attend Pope Francis' funeral. Hungary sees Peter Magyar, a former supporter of the ruling Fidesz party, emerge as a leading political figure, with his TISA party reportedly polling ahead of Prime Minister Viktor Orban's Fidesz. The World Bank has approved a $250 loan to Lebanon to help alleviate the country's severe electricity shortages, while Fault Lines investigates civilian deaths and potential war crimes involving US-made bombs used by Israel. Myanmar is now served by a direct-to-home satellite video channel from the BBC, delivering BBC News Burmese content in response to an urgent need following an earthquake and replacing a U.S.-funded service that Donald Trump has ceased to fund. The Philippines is strategically positioned to benefit from Trump's tariff overhaul due to low tariffs and exemptions, despite infrastructure challenges, according to a new study. In the Solomon Islands, new research reveals ongoing systemic issues affecting voter trust and rights in the 2024 election process, and the country is considering sending health workers to the Cook Islands as part of a potential labor mobility scheme. Somalia is the site of battles between al-Shabaab and the Somali army, with al-Shabaab claiming control of Wargati town and its military base, a claim denied by the Somali army. South Africa saw Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky cut short his official visit due to a major Russian missile attack on Kyiv. In Sudan, at least 28 journalists have been killed since fighting began in April 2023. As they report on the conflict, according to Sudan's Journalists Union, the United States saw a judge order the Trump administration to facilitate the return of a 20-year-old Venezuelan man who was deported to El Salvador in violation of a previous court settlement. Moreover, the U.S. conducted an airstrike in Sana'a, Yemen, resulting in the deaths of 12 people, according to local health officials, hitting a densely populated area near the old city. Finally, Vietnam and the U.S. are commencing trade talks as Vietnam seeks relief from potential reciprocal tariffs imposed by the U.S., which could levy a 46% charge on the trade-reliant country. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM today.